Hi, I'm Noam Wasserman, Dean of the SciSim School of Business at Yeshiva University. I was a longtime professor at Harvard Business School, an entrepreneur, and a venture capitalist. I wrote the bestseller, The Founder's Dilemmas.
And I'm Charlie Harari. I've been working with companies for over 10 years. And that book, Founder's Dilemmas, and the challenges faced by the 10,000 founders in it is the basis of this podcast. We are delving into the issues faced by startups to help you avoid the pitfalls that claim so many good companies.
Let's get started.
Welcome, everybody, to part 2 of an incredible interview. We are excited to continue this conversation. Dean, set us up for number 2.
Hey, welcome back to Asaf Gilboa. Thank you, Charlie, for opening this next episode with Asaf, a founder who waited a decade in between foundings. And we got into, at the end of last episode, a bit of how he was shaped in between by his experiences at Amazon, at Bridgewater Associates, the very different bias to action versus the lots of thought that goes into very pivotal decisions, and how to be able to balance the two, and now bringing it all together as a founder of a new startup. Asaf, let's get into a little bit more of some of the things that you had teed up around the team dynamic in your first startup with the drone co-founders. You talked a little bit about the way in which the dynamic, the difficult conversations, the things that you guys had to go through together. What are some of the things that you neglected in that has hopefully shaped now what you're doing in your founding? What are the most important couple of hard conversations that you guys neglected? Why do you think you neglected them? And how are you now being able to tackle things more effectively?
Yeah. So I'll start. I think we neglected a lot of hard conversations. We had one advantage that was big, is we knew each other years before. And so we knew exactly what the other person was from values, and trusted each other a lot. And based on that, we pretty much rushed without having some of the hard conversations early on. And so the conversations we didn't have were what people wanted. I don't think we didn't even know how to ask the question of what people wanted, but as we rolled through the startup, we discovered different people wanted different things. Like, we had one of the co-founders that really wanted his independence. He wanted to be able to do other things in parallel. He wanted to take time off when he wanted to take time off. And we had the rest of the co-founders are committed to a point where they were working 18 hours a day. And the contribution wasn't necessarily off. I'd say that co-founder that felt like he could take more time off was actually contributing a lot. But that feeling of, hey, I'm here 18 hours a day and the other person is coming and going, created a lot of tension.
Sure.
In the journey we went through. We also, I'd say, we didn't realize how long the journey is. Like, we were young, we were 26. We had done like military service. In the military, every year and a half, 2 years, you change positions. And so we never thought in decade-long thoughts, and nobody talked about, and we were 26. It's like most of us had kids, or some of us had kids during that period, got married, like things change in our lives. And we never had that conversation. Okay, what do you want? Where are we going? How long is this going to take? How much tenacity do you have? How much money do you need to make so that you can sustain a family on this startup? How much do we need to raise? All those things, when we hit them, we had the conversation. It wasn't a lack of trust. It wasn't that we were afraid of the conversations. We didn't even know what conversations to have as we roll through them. And to be good, we're really good friends even today. My best friends are the people that were with me in the company. I'll give the anecdote we give is when we started running out of money, we would still all come to the office and play PlayStation for hours in the office, in the meeting room, because we just want to hang. We don't know what to do, but we just want to hang out together. And so even with all that hard and tension and ups and downs, we stayed very good friends. Mm-hmm. But all those things surprised us. And I would say I'm new startup. All of us, the three of us, are much more experienced than the group that was there. We are diversified, though. We are 3 Israelis that went to US business school together. So caution how much I've solved that problem by diversification. We come from different backgrounds, but we do have, I think that's been helpful in the speed of conversations and ease. I am always worried about how are we too monolithic in the way we think? Hopefully not. But the thing we do now, we're across different geographies. One's in LA, one's in New York, I'm in Tel Aviv. Maybe we're moving a bit around, but we meet every couple of months in person for a few days. And one of the things we make sure we do is in the last dinner or lunch, depends a bit on the schedule, we sit and we say, okay, we're going to open up now and take 2-3 hours. And we go and we're like, okay, I, Asaf, say what I think I've been doing well and not well, and what I think to the group, not in general life, but what I think I've been like good and not good. And then we go around and Guy says about me, and then David says about me, and then we do David, and then we do Guy, and we go through. And the idea is no conversations behind each other's backs. No, me and one of the co-founders talking about the other co-founder that he's not delivering or that you can't trust him on this. There's like, the rule is, if you can't say it to somebody's face, then don't talk about it. And for me personally, each one of those conversations is revelation. Like, it comes in as things, and you need to do this in person. You need to do it organized. You need people to stop and think what they want to say. But I come out of these and I'm like, okay, here's the things I'm going to change in my behavior, or here's what I realized today in my behavior that I would change. And I think we've almost like structured a place for hard conversations on a periodic time, not with employees, not reviews or whatever, but between the three of us.
Yep.
The problem. Very Bridgewater.
I have to just deconstruct some of this. This is great stuff. This is great stuff. And there's so much that you just said that I just want to pull out on 2 or 3 pieces if I can. And ask a question, really, because in my head, watching companies, and I spend a lot of time either in or watching or carrying or thinking about companies, company structure. And I constantly sort of in my head circle around this concept of what is better, this perfect mix of diverse pieces that fit this perfect puzzle, or people that like each other and a sense of unity. Even in the, again, I don't know enough about the Israeli military because everything I know about it is reading, watching, caring, praying. I'm in that space of it, this side of the Atlantic. But my gut is that most of the Israelis in 1946, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 50 till 60, I would say till 1967, most of them had no idea what they were doing. And just like, I don't know, how do we start this Mossad thing? Let's just tip off a few guys and hope that we never get bombarded when we go to the Kotel and pray and they throw, bottles at us. But what I think the Israelis had, and what's unique about the Israeli culture, I think even to this day, is this incredible sense of yichud, of unity. Now, personally, I think that it's what for a conversation, but security-wise, and we are sitting in a nation, and we are sitting in a homeland, and we have a goal and a purpose, but there's a sense of oneness that I just think the Israeli culture has uniquely. I'm an American. I never once got stopped by a cop and he said, hi brother, how are you? Why are you speeding? You know what I'm saying? Like, you will literally get thrashed by some Israeli cop and he'll call you achi 10 times in that conversation, which is shocking to anyone but Israelis. I think there's a question, and there's a question to what I'm saying, which is, I think there's a value to knowing the people that you found with and liking them and liking being near them. And that unity, that oneness, I think compensates a little bit, right? Based on the early conversation we had, we can't have just shades of the same gray, but I think what you're experiencing is a sense of we are very much alike and we like each other. We don't have to be exactly the same, but my sense is that that feeling of unity actually drives companies much further than the perfect ensemble of talent. I mean, I think you see this in sports, and I think you see this, I see this in many companies that I can think of in my head. What we would call regular people that are unified accomplish a lot more than perfectly designed people that are not. And I think where it manifests is in the back channeling. And I think it's all one piece that you just said. I think the affection for each other allows you to have a combustion engine that moves forward And you know it's healthy when you have the ability to pull a guy aside and say, what's wrong with you, versus back channeling, back talking, and breaking that down. And so I think a lot of what you're saying here, if we just pull it out and sort of articulate it to the people that are not living it, I think it's important that they know that gossiping, back channeling, disunity, disloyalty is, in my opinion, more fatal than lack of knowledge, lack of experience, lack of unique capacity to do something to be world class in building something great. And Professor Dean, tell me if you agree or disagree with what I'm saying.
So no, there's definitely some interesting things you're pulling out. I would just highlight pushback on one piece of it, which is the pushback. So when Asaf was talking about the unity, he was also highlighting some of the downsides of it. That
Right.
they're not willing to be able to tee up. This is how you can do better. These are the ways in which you're not reaching your potential. We talked about the metaphor of Ezer Kenegdo, from Adam and Eve and the relationship between them.
Yeah.
Helper against you. And the search for unity often leads you to just do the helper. The against you is what Asaf and his team have now brought process to, making it more formal. The every 2 months are going around and each of us pushing on each other about what are the ways that we should be doing better than we are right now. That's where you're able to get over the hurdle of unity and comedy, like wanting to be very friendly with each other, leading you to not push back on each other. And by having it around the table at these in-person meetings, that's where they're able to have that process of forcing themselves to do the Kenegdo, to do the pushing back on each other.
I agree, and I want to get Asaf's take on this. I think this is, again, uniquely Israeli. Again, I do. I think what is distinct about the Israeli culture that I don't think Israelis even appreciate is that it is a culture of unity and opposition. Right? It's not negativity. They are unifiedly opposed to each other. You can literally see somebody. I was at a park once, and a lady comes over to another woman and gives her a 10-minute, what are you doing as a mother? The kid's hanging on the things and it's cold. Where's the sweater? And I'm watching going, that would never, there's going to be a fight. And the mother and her, and when she's done giving her all of the stuff, she's like, she hugs her and says, I love the kid and everything's wonderful. Gives her a blessing. Like it's a uniqueness that I think exists in the Israeli culture, that they can be kenegdos in at the same time being biachdos. And I think I'm postulating, but to me, I think that's what Asaf is articulating to us. And Asaf, you're with us, so you'll tell us if it's right or wrong.
Yeah,
I think you're articulating this dynamic. Yeah.
So I don't. I'm careful to take credit for all Israelis. Like on that. So I'll be very careful about a whole society. I will say, I think this duality, and Bridgewater used to call it open-minded and assertiveness. There's all kinds of way of talking, but the ability to do two things at the same time, to trust and push back, and they're tied to each other. But living in them together is a lot of the talent. A lot of the ability to do two things that are contradictory to one another and find the balance between them. And I think this is what's required, right? To be what you call the Ezer Kenegdo, the pushback, you need trust. And so it needs to sit on a foundation of trust. We trust each other. And somebody once told me this on like mutual respect and mutual trust, right? It's, I think you're smart, so I want to hear what you want to say. And I trust that your motives are making the group stronger, not trying to beat me. And so if you have those two things, mutual trust and mutual respect, whatever you're telling me is not because you want to get more power, it's because you want to make the group stronger. And I want to listen to you because I value your opinion and I think you're smart. Now, if we have both those things, we can fight all day long. And so I think that is a big deal. And I think in the Israeli society, to a degree, a lot of people will question what's happening today in Israel and places like that. Right. But in certain parts of the Israeli society that run together, there's an underlying trust layer that you can then start to push back on top. If you run into a random person in a very much bigger society and you start talking, you're like, okay, why are you talking? Let's start with the fact that I don't trust you. Now, first build the trust. And then on the similarity, I will say, and this is the thing I learned. So Bridgewater has this like values, abilities, skills. And what we did the first startup was we were very aligned in values, but we were also very aligned in abilities and had some differentiation at skills, not a lot. The thing we have now is we're very aligned in values. We have somewhat overlapping abilities, but different levels of abilities. And then our skills are completely different. I can't write code. I don't know how to write a marketing campaign. Like those things our skills are very different from one another. But I think friends, not friends, whoever, you need to run with people who you share mutual values with. And it's easier if you've known that. It's hard to learn those things by having 3 coffees and dating a co-founder. And so it takes a long time. The shortcut is people that have different abilities and skills, but you've experienced their values and you know to appreciate their values.
Yeah, just to encapsulate, Charlie, the point that you and Asaf have been making. We refer to Israel as startup nation. In some ways, we can also refer to it as Ezer Kenegdo nation. Like the nation does very well at being able to balance the two of those. So just pushing on in terms of the intangibles, like one other piece of it that I know from our discussions, Asaf, that you've also changed a bit in the entrepreneurial intangibles realm, opportunistic versus focused. Talk to us a little bit about how you guys balanced that or didn't in the first startup, and how you're approaching it now in this new startup.
Yeah, I understood the cone, and I'll explain this. The cone of opportunity that you're allowed to operate in, and how you kill everything outside the cone of opportunity. That's what's changed dramatically. So the first startup, we would get random phone calls from people from all over the world. We were selling drones for civilian applications, and you get somebody in Africa that wants to count trees, somebody in South America that wants to sell drones to the local police, and these kinds of things. And we didn't know what made sense and didn't make sense, so we just chased after everything. We would write the documents for multi-million-dollar tenders that there was no chance in the world that anybody logical would ever take us for it. And we had this approach of, who knows? We'll try, and one thing will stick. And we would, if we throw 100 balls at the wall, one of them will stick, and we'll be billionaires. In retrospect, looking at it, many of those made no sense. And then in this startup, when we've gone through, I look at opportunity. We get opportunities all the time. We've decided on a focus area, and we're highly focused on it. And there's a lot of opportunities within that focus area. And we believe that if we're going to win, a challenge in that world, it's going to be because we bear it, because we are the best solution for the person to solve that problem. But when an opportunity comes, we're like, oh, you should do blue collar workers, not the area we're starting with, or university professors, not the area we're like, thank you, write it down on a piece of paper. We'll deal with it later. It's not in our focus area. There's no reason we would win that battle today. And so when the time comes, let's go back to it. And I think this understanding that being opportunistic does not mean losing focus. And this idea of how to understand the limits of what you're doing, but then inside of it to be open-minded. This is what I said earlier about Bridgewater, open-minded and assertive. I have a view. One of our values that we do talk about a lot is strong views lightly held. Like, we have a strong view of where we're going, but it's lightly held. If the information changes and we should change direction, we'll change it. But we have a strong view. We go in a direction. We're not lost. We're not whatever comes in the door, we go after that. Which is very different than where we were before.
Okay, I love that phrase, capturing a little bit more of the culture that you've been able to see, and this is how we should be building it. There's one other very memorable phrase that you used when we were chatting about it within startup land, about you can do anything but not everything.
Exactly.
It captures a bit of what you were just talking about here.
Yeah. So also I think gets to the point of the mission. And that, I think, another dynamic that draws unity or allows people to trust each other and to allow that level of healthy opposition is when you all are agreed as to where you're all going. And when the mission overwhelms your sense of self, there is a sense of needing each other more and allowing for opposition. You see this a lot of times in sports, when a team is unified towards winning a championship, there is a more of an openness towards growth and criticism and unity. And so I think this is the point, which is as that cone becomes clearer and everybody agrees we got to get to there, the other stuff starts to fall into place too. There's more openness to the opposition. There's less desire for back channeling. The diversity the diversity becomes more of interest, knowing you need the diverse pieces to get to the goal, and the focus moves from self to mission, which I think is unique. I think is very Israeli, which is why I think, again, not to have a conversation about the Israeli culture, but I think whenever there's a security threat, the society unifies differently when there isn't, because there's this unique refocus on mission. And I think it applies in startups all the time and in companies to allow this behavior.
When I went on this journey, where I had a bunch of things that I was looking for. One of them is I don't want to have performance reviews for myself anymore. I don't want to have like the end of the quarter, half year, somebody comes and says, Asaf, you were good. Here's more money, more equity, a promotion. If the organization succeeds, I succeed. If the organization fails, I fail. That's it. No intermediary between like taking care of Asaf's career in parallel to the organization or in a different line than Asaf's career is the organization is Asaf's career. Like that's, and to my co-founders as well, I'd say. And I think that is a thing that if the three co-founders are aligned with it, that if the three co-founders go around and said, there's no me in this like group. If we succeed, we succeed. If we fail, we fail. But what title I have, what role I have, where I move, very hard, easier said than done. What I'm saying, very, very difficult. There is an advantage, I'd say, in the later, like doing a startup later in your career, that in the earlier startup, we had a lot of, okay, if it fails, what job will we have? Who will hire us? Where will we go? Oh, I was the CTO, so they'll take me to be a CTO at another startup. And we were thinking, as we were there, everybody in the back of their head had the thought of like, what does this mean on their resume looking forward? And I think at the stage we're at now, it's hardly a thought we have. Like, hey, if I have this title in the group, then I can find the next job that I have, which reduces a lot of the tension and friction that comes with it.
Yeah, to also borrow from, so David Brooks breaks down a little bit into what you're talking about here. You're talking about the resume view. How is this going to look on my resume? I'm going to be hireable after it fails when we're young. He then shifts his gears into something at HBS. We used to do the exercise about write your obituary. Take that view, like the eulogy view of what you're going to be doing there. And it sounds like, for better or for worse, with that more darker framing, sounds like you've shifted a little bit more to that instead of the resume view, because this is that later stage in life that you're approaching the founding.
And to be clear, I want to, from a very privileged place, like we built great resumes, we feel confident where we came, we've had a journey that we've been very, very lucky to have. And so having that confidence, I understand, is not trivial. So I don't want to trivialize people worrying about if the startup fails, where do I go work? We've come into this with a level of confidence that we've been privileged to have that allows us to focus on the organization and less on who we are inside it.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the other memorable things that have stuck with me since our most recent of the chats is when you were talking about hope, optimism, and a variety of other ways that those intangibles you've changed with those. The phrase was, don't build for miracles. Can you talk a little bit about what that mindset is and how that's changed for you?
Yeah, so I'll say I'm an extreme optimist. Like I sit with people and I tell them how I'm going to change the world, and like the whole way people communicate about their work and talent and resumes, and everybody looks and says that's hard. And I say, yeah, if it wasn't hard, I wouldn't do it. So I have a lot of optimism. I just don't believe that one day I'll wake up and it just worked. I believe that the path to there goes through step by step, building layer over layer and solving one problem at a time. And so luck is not a strategy kind of approach. You need to have a way of seeing why step one leads to step two, leads to step three. I'm going to use a very bad analogy, but analogy I use sometimes in the team is soccer versus basketball. I don't know what you guys know, but like soccer, You can be a worse team, but if you defend well and get one goal in, you win. Basketball, if you get to the end and you have one shot that wins the game, it's because all the game you played an equal game. Like if you really dominated the game, you should have never gotten to the point where the last shot is the one that wins the game. And so we very much believe we're playing basketball. It's about collecting so many points that we win the game and not the, hey, we're going to wait here until there's one opportunity. We hit that goal and then we'll exit and run away as fast as we can once we've signed whatever, Walmart, whatever, on whoever does. Like, that's not the miracle we're looking for one miracle goal. It's the wake up every morning, go and attack, get points, collect points, and then eventually we'll get the championship.
Excellent.
Looking forward.
Love it.
One of the things that you're bringing to mind is also a little bit of that trade-off. This is to frame it in some ways from a faith perspective about the trade-off between hishtadlus and emunah. Do you have the faith that lightning is going to strike, that the miracle will happen, that everything will be able to line up for you? Or do you put in your hishtadlus, your work day in, day out, wake up every morning, put points on the board, be able to accumulate over time all the pieces in the puzzle rather than hoping that someone will bestow a puzzle on you already made? And so that tension between the two, hope, optimism, swing for the fences, but make sure that you're ready to be able to bunt your way onto base, that you're going to be able to hit single after single, be able to get everyone around. And it's a very, in some ways, risky way to go the emunah way without doing the hishtadlus for yourself, without your putting in what is needed to be able to get to that point. You've highlighted how sometimes it's the preparation, sometimes it's the reflection, the skill building, all of the other things that are the coalescing of a foundation. And then you can start building upon that to be able to do the startup. But to hope that you can do it on shaky ground, that you're just going to take a whole bunch of chances and hope that lightning is going to strike, not the best way to be able to approach doing something that's going to hopefully change the world.
100%. 100%. It's the possibility probability. You don't want it to be a possibility. You want it to be an actual probability. Andrew, the quote I heard a few weeks ago that I love is Mark Andreessen was asked, what advice do you give startups? And he said, be so great, they can't ignore you. And so I think that's the phrase of like, okay, in the area we are, in the small industry we're trying to conquer, in the problem we're trying to solve, I want to be so great they can't ignore us. Not that by mistake they chose us. And they didn't notice that they didn't buy IBM, they bought us along the way.
Okay, as true in startups as it is in life.
As it's true. I agree.
Okay, well, Asaf, we thank you so much for the time. I mean, it was so insightful, and I think both from that which you built and that ultimately in your failures, the insights were equally amazing. And we thank you so much for taking the time and for sharing your insights with us.
Thank you. I had fun.
Amazing. And for those who want to listen to more episodes, go to Founders Dilemmas Podcast. Of course, you can send us any questions at foundersdilemmaspodcast@gmail.com. Be sure to use the link in the show notes of this episode to get a copy of Dean Wasserman's book, Founder's Dilemma, and to find out about his business programs, as well as a copy of my book, and join me for my weekly podcast on liking greatness. See you there. Thanks for listening. And of course, we look forward to seeing you next time.